Hello everyone. In this video, let us practice solving some very interesting SQL problems using a very interesting case study. Now, I have taken this case study from learnsql.com platform, and I'm going to talk more about the platform a little later. Now, as you can see, the case study is about a bike rental shop which is owned by Emily. Emily is the shop owner and she would like to gather data to help her grow the business. She has hired you as a SQL specialist to get some answers about her business, such as how many bikes does the shop own by category, what was the rental revenue for each month, etc. The answers are hidden in the database. You just need to figure out a way how to use SQL to get these answers. The actual URL of where I found this case study, I'm going to be providing it to you. In fact, I'll provide you this whole file. This is a Notion page, but I'm going to export this into a PDF and I'm going to provide this to you. I'll also provide the data set, the script and everything else that I'll be using in the video. It will be present in my blog. You'll find the link to my blog in the video description. Now, just to show you quickly where I found this case study. Now, this is from the learnsql.com platform. As you can see, this is part of this 2023 monthly SQL practice set. So in this platform, learnsql.com, every month they provide you some SQL challenge where you will have some case study where you will need to use SQL to solve some problems. So this particular problem that I took, it's from the November 2023 SQL challenge. Now, if you just go here and if you just click on introduction, you will get some introduction about the data set, this course and what you need to do. And you can then go ahead and actually solve the SQL or this whole case study in this platform itself. But for the sake of simplicity and for this video, I have created the data set myself in the PostgreSQL database. I'll be using the pgadmin tool. Okay. Now, let me just go back into my Notion page and let's just look at the database. So as part of this bike rental case study, we have 5 different tables. Okay, so there's a customer table, bike table, rental table, membership type and membership table. Okay, now I have given you explanation about what each of these tables are and the different columns they have, but I'll not go through this here, but rather I'll show you the sample data in these tables. So as you can see, first let's look at the customer table. You can see that I have, I think 10 different customers, their customer name and their email, right? Then I have the bike table, which provides you information about, I think 10 different bikes. Now, just to highlight, when I say bike, it basically means bicycle. It's not a motorbike. You can see that I have different models of the bike and the different categories like mountain bike, road bike, hybrid bike, electric bike, etc. This is the rental for each hour for each of these bikes. Here I have the rental for per day basis, and then I have the status if the bike is available, rented or out of service, right? Then I have the third table, which is about the rental. This basically provides you information about if a bike has been rented, then which customer has rented it, which bike did they rent, when was the start time, and for how long did they rent the bike. This is in minutes, the duration. Then the total amount the customer has paid to rent the bike, right? Then I have the table membership type. There are 3 types of memberships. So there is a basic monthly, basic annual, and premium monthly. Okay, and the information about what is the cost of it, some description, etc. And then finally in the 5th table, I have information about the membership. This is basically about the customers who have purchased one or the other memberships. Okay, so the membership type, purchased by which customer, the start and the end date, and the total price they paid for that membership, right? So all of this information is present in these 5 tables, and we need to use these 5 tables to answer some of the problems that Emily has with regards to her bike shop. So we have totally 8 problems that we need to solve using this case study. But of course, I will not be able to solve all the 8 problems in this video because then the video is going to be very long. Rather, what I'll be doing is I'm going to be solving 2 problems. Okay, so I'll be solving the problem number 5 and then I think I'll be solving the problem number 7. Okay, so for all the remaining problems, you can solve it yourself. Now straight away, let's get into solving the problem number 5. The problem number 5 states Emily is preparing a sales report. She needs to know the total revenue from rentals by month, by year and all time across all the years. Display the total revenue from rentals for each month, the total for each year and the total across all the years. Do not take membership into account. There should be 3 columns in the output: year, month and revenue. So what they're basically telling is we need to generate kind of a report which is going to provide the total revenue from rentals only. We should not include memberships, specific to each month, each year and then the across all the years. Okay, and we need to display these three columns. And here they have some information about how the output should be sorted. Sort the result chronologically, display the year total after all the month totals for the corresponding year. Show the all-time totals as the last row. Some sample output has been shown here. You can see that I have information about different years. 2022, I think there are two records here, in fact 3 records. The first 2 record is for the month 11 and 12, November and December. What was the total revenue is mentioned here. Then for this entire year 2022, if this column is null, that means there is no month, it is for all the months of this year. The total revenue was 350. Now when it comes to 2023, you can see that, okay, here I have some ... This basically means some additional records which is not shown here. Okay, so for every month, for every year, you will find one record. Okay, and the total revenue for that month is shown. Additionally, there should also be a record for each year. So for 2023, I have one record with the total revenue for that year, right? And then there should be a last record which is specific to the total revenue for all the years, for all the months. So in that case, the year and the month would be null. Okay, so this is our output, how it should look like. Okay, now in order to solve this, let me go into my PG admin tool. We know the revenue that we are looking for is the revenue that we have got from rentals only. We should not be considering membership, right? So that means I only need to consider the rentals table. So what I'll do is I'll just take this table and I'll just run this. So from the problem statement, what we have understood is that we need to find the total revenue. In order to find a total revenue, we have this column total paid, right? So we need to sum up these values here. But we need to do a sum up specific to each month, for each year, and then for the entire table, right? All the revenue in total for all the years, for all the months, right? Now, if I go back to my problem statement here, let's try to split this problem into few different queries. Okay, so I need to find a total revenue specific to month, year, and across everything. Let's first try to just do it, let's say for month. So if I have to do it specific to each month, what I can just do is I can just tell, okay, so I'll just move this here. I can group the data based on month, right? Group by month. But do I have month here? No. But I have the start timestamp, right? Now this start timestamp, you can see that I can extract the month from this particular field. In order to extract just the month from a field, I can just use the extract function. So I can say extract, let's say month from the start timestamp field. And let's say I'm just going to call it like month. If I just run this, you can see that I have this last field where I have the month as 11, 12, etc. Right? So I can extract month from any of the timestamp column using the extract function. I think this is pretty straightforward, right? And then I could take this value and group the data based on this month and then do a sum of revenue, right? But you could see that I have data for 2022, for 2023, etc. Right? So ideally, I should also take the data for each month as well as for each year. So what I'll do is I'll just take for each year here. So I'm just going to say year, and this is going to be year. Okay. And let's say if I just run this, you can see that I have the year and the month that I have got for every record. Next, I need the total revenue. So I think the revenue is coming from this field total paid. So for that, I want to sum up all the revenues for each month, for each year, right? So I can use the sum aggregate function, and here I'll say total paid, right? And this is going to be, let's say, my revenue. Okay. And I'm just going to group the data based on this. So this field, that is the year, and I can group the data based on month, right? And if I just run it, so I'm getting 12 records. And you can see that I have some records for 2023 and then some for 2022. Just to better understand this, let me sort the data. So I'll say sort by, again, the same 2 fields. Okay. And if I just run this, now we can see that I think for 2022, I have 2 records only. So there are only rentals that happened during November and December of 2022. So only these 2 records. Then for 2023, I think there are transactions or rentals happened from the first month, that is Jan, until October. Okay. So I'm getting the total revenue for each of these months and for each of these years. Okay. Now, just to simplify this query, when you're using PostgreSQL, you can also, inside your group by, you don't need to specify the entire column name. You can also provide the alias. Okay. This may not work in every database, but it definitely works in PostgreSQL. So here, instead of mentioning that this entire like extract function here, I can just mention the alias, right? This alias kind of represents this whole thing here, right? And the same way for the second one also I can mention the alias month, right? And I can also use the same thing in order by as well. And now if I run it, you can see that I'm still getting the same output. Now I can give a different alias here also if I want. So let's say I'm just going to say YRS and MNTH, okay, just to make sure that it is different from the keywords that we're using here. And here I will need to provide that alias name, so month and year. And if I run it, I'm still getting the same output. Now this is fine. So here what I have done is I have grouped the data specific to each month, specific to each year, right? And I've got the total revenue. But this is not what Emily wants. What Emily wants is, of course, she wants this information, but in addition to that, she also wants to know the total revenue for each year, irrespective of the month, right? Now, if I want to find a total revenue for each month, irrespective of the month, then I can write another query. And here, instead of grouping the data based on month, I can group the data just based on year. And I don't need the month. So in place of month, I can just tell, let's say, null. Okay. And now if I just run this, you can see that I'm getting the total revenue specific to each year. So for 2022, it is 350. For 2023, it is 1370, right? So this is fine. This is the second ask that Emily had. And the third ask that, or the requirement that Emily had, was the total revenue across all the years, right? So from the entire table, if I have to take the total revenue, I can easily do that by, let's say I'll just copy this and I'm just going to put it here. And let's say I don't even need the years. So I'm just going to say null. And I just need the sum, right? Sum of this total paid field. If I do that, you can see that I'm getting the value that I want. That is the total revenue. And if you look at the extreme output here, this is exactly what it is, 1720, right? And that's what I have here. So what this basically means is the report that Emily wanted us to generate, where she wants to find the total revenue specific to each month, for each year, and the total revenue for across all the time, we can get it by using 3 different queries, right? So I have this first query written to find the total revenue per month. This is the total revenue per year, and this is the total revenue across the entire records, right? And in order to bring all of them together, I can just use the union all clause in between them, right? Because you see that all the 3 queries are having the same columns, year, month, and revenue, right? So the union all should work. If I just run it, I should have got the output, but I'm not, because I think I'm using an order by here, which I cannot. The order by should be at the end. So I'll put it here. And now if I just run it, and I'm still getting an error because I have another order by here. So I'll remove that. And if I now run the query, now it's working. Okay. And I'm getting 15 records. So this is exactly how I want it. Okay. So the total revenue for each month, the total revenue for each year, okay, and then again total revenue for each month of 2023, total revenue for the year 2023, and the total revenue for the entire data set or the entire database, right, for the entire store, right? Now, the query that you see here is actually providing you the solution that you want, okay? But this is not the best way of solving this problem. This query is not very efficient. Okay. Now there is a better way of solving this problem. In fact, there is a better way whenever you have problems like this. Okay. Our requirement was that we had to get the total revenue. That means we need to group the data. We needed to group the data specific to, there were multiple list of values based on which we wanted to group the data. So for one output, we wanted to group the data by month. For the other, we wanted to group the data by year. And for the other, we just wanted to take everything. So whenever you have a requirement where you want to group the data from the same table, but let's say depending on different columns, then there is a concept in SQL that you can use, which is called as grouping set. Now it's kind of like an extension over your group by clause, or like a subgroup by clauses, okay, where you can tell SQL to group the data based on different list of columns. And that's exactly what I'll be using now. Okay, so I have this query here which looks pretty long and it's like unnecessarily too long. And also the second problem is that the same table is being queried 3 different times, right? And also grouped 3 different times. Rather, what I can do is I'll just copy the first query that I wrote here, okay, and I'll just put that one here, okay. And now if I just run this query, you can see that I'm getting 12 records. And what's exactly happening is It's grouping the data. It's basically extracting the month and the year from the start timestamp field, and then it's summing up the total revenue. And I'm grouping the data based on year and month. So I'm getting the revenue specific to each month and each year, right? Now, what I can do here is, ideally what I want to do is I want to group the data by these two columns, but I also want to group the data just by years, right? And just to show you one more thing here, if I just show you, let's say this particular, the last query that I wrote, okay? I'm just going to query this, okay? So if I just run this, you can see that I'm getting one record. Why? Because I'm just doing a sum of the total paid field to get the total revenue, right? But here I can also add a group by clause, saying that group by, and I can just put an, I do not mention any column, just say open close parenthesis, and if I run it, I'm still getting the same output. Basically SQL is doing the same thing, right? So this one also will work. Now what this means is, in the first query I grouped by year and month, in the second query I grouped by year, and in the third query I basically grouped by no columns, right? So if I could somehow write a query where instead of writing 3 different queries to do 3 different group bys, I could do the same thing in one single query, but here inside group by, I need to provide those 3 different group bys, right? How I can do that is, after group by, you can mention a keyword called as grouping set, okay? And inside the grouping set, you open the parenthesis, okay? And within that parenthesis, you can specify multiple list of columns, okay? So here, first, I'm going to provide the usual one, that is group the data based on year and month, combination of year and month. Then I also want to group the data based on year, right? And then finally, I also want to group the data based on nothing, no columns, right? Why am I doing this? This group, these 2 columns, years and month, was basically from my first group by. My second group by, I just did group by based on the years, that is mentioned here. And the third one is basically no columns mentioned, that is the empty column list, right? So this syntax here will actually work. You just tell group by, instead of just providing some list of columns, you say grouping set. Once you provide grouping set, then SQL will understand that, okay, now I am basically, SQL is basically being asked to not just group the data on one set of columns, but multiple set of columns. So each of these multiple set of columns, you need to put inside the parenthesis and separate them by a comma, okay? So here I have provided 3 different sets of columns. So this is the first one, second one, and third one, okay? Now if I run it, I'm getting an error because it is not grouping set, but it is grouping sets. So if I run it now you can see that I'm getting 15 records, okay? Now just to better understand the output, let me also sort the data. I'll say sort the data based on years and month. And if I just run it, now you can see that I'm getting 2 records for 2022 for each month, the available months. For 2022, I also have 1 record for that entire year. Then for 2023, I have, I think, 10 records specific to each month, and then I have another record for 2023 for that entire year, and finally I have the last record where the data is being grouped irrespective of year and month for the whole data set, right? So basically what this means is, this query here and the above query here is basically returning the same output, okay? The difference is that the 2 reasons why this query is a much better query is because, one, of course, this is so small, right? It's easier to read and it is easier to maintain. Second thing is, this is, with regards to performance, this is much better because this will be faster. Why? Because here this query, this table is only being queried just once, and the grouping is also happening just once on this query, right? Whereas here we have 3 different queries, so the SQL has to read the table or fetch the data from the table 3 different times, do 3 separate group bys, right? So this is much better query. The only thing that we did here was, instead of providing one list of columns to group the data, we provided multiple list of columns by specifying this keyword grouping sets, okay? So once you specify grouping sets, you can provide different sets of columns on which the grouping will happen, right? So internally what is happening is, SQL is grouping the data from this table 3 different times. First it will group the data based on these 2 columns, then it will group the data based on this column, then it will group the data based on this column. Basically it is empty, so it will kind of like do a total aggregation, right? So I hope this is clear, and I hope you understand this concept of grouping sets. Now, if you're not familiar with grouping sets or all the different extensions that are available with group by and you want to learn more about them, then I would highly recommend that you go through this course that is given by the learnsql.com platform. So the course name is Group by Extensions in PostgreSQL, and this kind of covers all the different concepts of group by extensions that you will need to know. Okay, so for example, we just saw about grouping sets that we just used, right? So if you want to learn more about it with some proper examples and some really cool data sets, you have that here. So you have an introduction, and then you have explanation about the different data sets, and then all the different keywords that are available where you can be using grouping sets, and all the different things that you can do is mentioned in this entire course. Okay, so I'll not be going through this in detail, but this is a very good course which will give you complete information about this grouping sets. Now, along with grouping sets, there are a couple of other things that are also very useful, which are kind of part of this group by extensions. One is rollup and the other is cube. Okay, and you will basically get complete hands-on experience if you do this course. Okay, so if you are looking for a course where you want to learn more about it, I would highly recommend doing this course. And now recently, Learn SQL has done some major updates to the platform, so the user interface has been made even better. I already told you that I was a big fan of the user interface of this platform. Now it has become even better, right? So it's become even more easier for anyone to navigate through different sections of the platform and do any of the courses. Also, learnsql.com now supports PayPal payment, so you can purchase the course and make the payment using your PayPal account, or you can use any of your local debit or credit card to make the payments. So if you want to learn SQL and you want to do some really interesting SQL courses, then I would highly recommend you to check out the learnsql.com platform. I'll leave the link to this platform in the video description, so definitely check that out. Now let's get back into solving the problem number 7. Emily would like the data about membership purchased in 2023 with subtotals and grand totals for all the different combination of membership types and months. Display the total revenue for membership purchased in 2023 for each combination of month and membership type. Generate subtotals and grand totals for all possible combinations. There should be 3 columns: membership type name, month, and total revenue. Sort the results by membership type name alphabetically and then chronologically by month. Okay, now what this basically means is, let me just go back into PG admin. I'll open this new session here. I'll paste all the tables, and as part of this problem, so I'll tell this is like the problem 7, right? And as part of this problem, there are few different things that we need to do. So one, we need to find, let's say, total membership revenue for each month specific to each membership type, right? So specific to each membership type. Okay, so we need this information in our output. In addition to that, we also need few other information. That is we need the total membership revenue specific to each membership type. So specific to each membership type. Thirdly, we also need the total membership revenue, right? So because this is what they mentioned when they told us that we need to generate the total subtotals and grand totals for all possible combinations. These are all the possible combinations. So the total membership revenue for each month specific to each membership type. Now, when I say membership type, we know that there are 3 types of memberships, right? There is basic monthly, basic annual, and premium monthly. So specific to each membership type, what was the total revenue for each month? We need to find that. Second, we need to find the total membership revenue specific to each membership type. So irrespective of the month, we need to know total revenue for basic monthly, basic annual, and premium monthly. Finally, we want to know the total membership revenue irrespective of month and irrespective of the membership type, right? So these 3 things that we need to find in this query, and we are doing this only for 2023, right? So in order to solve this problem, first of all, let me write a query that is specific to the first need, the total revenue specific to each month and specific to each membership type. In order to do that, let me just take the membership table. I have this. If I query it, I'm getting all the data, but I do not have the membership type name mentioned here. That is present in the membership type table, right? So in order to do that, I will join the membership table with the membership type. So here I'm just going to say join it with the membership type. I'll call it like empty on empty dot, I think name, no, I think it's empty dot id equal to m dot, I think it is the membership type ID. Yeah, so it is membership type underscore ID, right? So if I join these two, I'm still getting 12 records, but I know each of this membership belongs to what is the name of each of this membership type, right? So that's fine. Now, what I want to do is I want to get the total revenue. So the total revenue, I'll get it from the total paid field, right? So here, first of all, I need the month and the membership type. So month I'll get from start date, and the membership type I'll get it from the name field, right? And revenue from the total paid field. So only these three fields I need. So I'll just fetch those three fields. So here I'm just going to say membership type. So I'll say name, okay? And then I want to fetch the month. So I'll say extract month from start date, okay, as let's say MNTH, okay. And the last field that I need is the total paid. That will, I need to get the total paid, right? Aggregate it. So I'll say sum of total paid, and this whole thing is going to be called as, let's say, total revenue, okay. And let me just okay, and let me just do one thing. I'll just move this to the next line. Okay, so now I need to group the data specific to each membership type and specific to each month, right? So here I'm just going to say group by name, comma, I'll use this alias here, month, okay? And if I just run it, now you can see that I'm getting 12 records. And let me just sort the data just for better clarity. So I'll do again sorting using the same fields, right? And if I run it, now you can see that basic annual. So this is one type of membership for the month 8, 9. So August, September, October, and November. This is the total revenue, right? And then basic monthly. So above one was basic annual. Now for basic monthly, again, I have, I think, 4 records. For each month, I have some total revenue, right? And same with the last type of membership, that is premium monthly. For each month, I have the total revenue. I have got this, right? But this is not everything that I want, because what I have got here is just satisfying this one condition here. So total revenue specific to each month, specific to each membership type. But I also want to know the total revenue specific to each membership type, right? So this means probably another query. Let me just write another query, and then we will try to find a simplified method of doing that. So I'll just paste it here. I want to find the revenue specific to each membership type, right? So the month can be null, right? And that's what I'll do here as well. And I think I'll just keep everything as it is. If I just run it, in fact, I don't need to do the group by month because it's anyways null, right? So if I just run it, now you can see that I'm getting one record for each type of membership: basic annual, basic monthly, and premium monthly, and I'm getting the total revenue, right? And now if I wanted to find a total membership revenue, so it is a total revenue from all of the membership, then I know what I need to do. I can just copy the whole query again here, and I can just say I don't even need the name. So here I can just call it like null, okay? And I don't even need to provide any column here, but I can provide an empty list of columns. So just open and close parenthesis. If I just run it, you can see that I am getting the total revenue, right? Here I don't even need to join this table, but anyways, let it be for now. So what this means is the final output that I want is kind of need to be the combination of these three queries, right? But I already previously told you that whenever you have a query where you want to group the data by multiple list of columns, then you can use the grouping sets, right? Or you can use that extension clauses. So let's try to solve the same problem using the grouping set clause. I'll copy this whole query here. I'll put it here, okay? And what I'll do is I'm just going to say grouping sets, okay? And okay, so I'll just open another parenthesis. And okay, so the first set of columns based on which my grouping should happen should be specific to each membership type name and month. The second thing is specific to, I think, each membership type name, right? So the second set of, or the list of column will be name, and the third list of column is kind of like empty without any grouping, right? So I'll provide the empty parenthesis here. Now let's say I will just run this, and I'm getting 16 record, and I think this works fine. So I'm getting 4 records here. That is the total revenue specific to each month and each membership type. Then I have the total revenue specific to each membership type, that is basic annual, right? Same way for basic monthly also I have these 5 records, and for premium monthly also I have these 5 records. And finally I have the last record, which is a total membership revenue irrespective of month and membership type, right? Now this is kind of correct. This is my final output that I wanted. Now I can also solve this problem using another concept, that is, instead of using grouping sets, I can use something called as cube. Okay. Now I just want to give you a quick explanation of what each of these means. So we have, when it comes to different extensions to group by, so I'm just going to call it like extensions to group by, there are, I would say, 3 things that probably you should learn now. Okay. One is the grouping sets, then we have something called as roll up, and then we have something called as cube. Okay. Now let's say for the sake of example, I'm just going to take a let's say list of columns. Okay. And I'm just going to say C1, C2 and C3. Okay. So this is the column 1, column 2 and column 3. Let's say you want to group your table data based on these 3 columns. Okay. When it comes to grouping set, the purpose of grouping set is you can provide multiple list of columns. So, but you need to specify each list of columns explicitly. So here I already told that we need to group the data based on the combination of these 2 columns, then this column, and then no columns, right? So the advantage of grouping set is you can specify the list of columns based on which the grouping should happen. The disadvantage is if you have, let's say, multiple columns, let's say 4, 5, 6, 7 columns, then this list of columns are going to be too many and you might miss out something, right? So that might be a challenge. In that case, that is where roll up or cube can be useful. Okay. So for example, when it comes to roll up, how the grouping will happen is, let's say you have 3 columns and you provide, let's say, something like roll up of these 3. Okay, so generally the syntax is something like you say group by, then you say roll up, and then you provide the list of columns. So let's say I provided these 3 columns. So what happens is SQL is going to create the following combinations of column list, okay, based on which the group by will happen. So first it will include all the 3. So that is C1, C2 and C3, right? So when SQL is trying to group the data based on roll up, it will group the data based on all the 3 columns first, then it will group the data only based on the first 2 columns, and then it will group the data only based on the first column. Okay, because here the concept is that it's kind of like you treat it like C1 is like hierarchically higher than C2 and C2 is hierarchically higher than C3. Okay, so initially it will take all the columns that you have provided and it will be part of the group by. So it will group all the data in that table based on these 3 columns. Then it will take only the first and the second column. So the last one will get eliminated. So it will group the data based on the first 2 columns. Then it will, in the next iteration, it will again ignore the last column. So it will group the data only based on the first column. And finally, again, it will group the data based on empty column. Okay. Now this is what a roll up does. The same thing when I say for cube, what happens with cube is, again, the syntax for providing cube is you say group by cube, then provide a list of columns. Here what happens is, first, again, it will consider all the 3 columns based on which the group by will happen. Second, what it will do is, when you say cube, it kind of will consider all the different combinations that is possible using that list of columns, right? So here I take all the 3 columns. In the second iteration, it will take these 2 columns, then it will take these 2 columns, then it will take C1 and C3. Okay, so here it will take C1, C2, then it will take C1, C3, then it will take C2 and C3. Okay, so it's like if you have ever used like permutations or combinations, you would know that these 3 can be like, you can combine it in 3 different ways, right? So all the ways you can form this link is mentioned here. And then cube will also consider individual columns. So it will group the data based on individual columns. So first it will say C1, then it will group the data using C2, then it will group the data using C3 as well. And finally, using the empty column set. Okay. So what this basically means is, whenever you want to group your table data using multiple list of columns, you have kind of these 3 options. So initially you can use the grouping sets where you will need to provide the list of columns explicitly. So explicitly you need to provide the list of columns then it will SQL will group the data specific to each of those list of columns. But if you use rollup, then the grouping of data will happen like this. So if you provide 3 columns, let's say if you had 3 columns on which group by should happen, initially it will, in the first iteration, group by will happen on all the 3 columns. Then it will take only the first 2 columns, then only the first column, and then the empty list of columns, right? When it comes to cube, it kind of will consider all combination of columns. So first it will take all the 3 columns, then it will combine first and second column, then second and third column, and then first and third column, right? And then it will group by based on each of these columns individually, right? And then finally the empty column. Okay, so this is how the cube works. Now I'm sure this is not very clear. I'll probably make a dedicated video explaining all of this in detail, but in this query that we have written, grouping sets, we can also rewrite this query using cube, right? Because it's kind of, I have 2 fields, because let's say for cube, the same thing, if I had only considered 2 columns, so only 2 columns, C1 and C2, then what would be the combination based on which the group by would happen? So initially it would take all the 2 columns, then it would basically, because these 2 are already grouped, the next thing it would take is just C1, right? And then it would take C2, and then it would take the empty. And this is exactly what we want, because as per this problem, we need to generate subtotals and grand totals for all the possible combinations. So all possible combinations we need to consider. And whenever you want to consider all possible combinations of how the grouping should happen, then we should be using cube. So if I rewrite this query now, so let's say I'm just going to copy this whole query, and let's say I'll just put it here, okay? And instead of using grouping sets, I'll just tell cube, and I'll just provide the 2 columns, okay? So that is name comma month, right? And I think that's all. And if I run it, you can see that I'm getting 20 records, and this is actually correct. Why? Because initially the grouping happened based on membership type name and month, then the grouping happened based on membership type name only, then the grouping happened based on month only, then the grouping happened across all the records, right? And you can see that for basic annual I have 4 records specific to each month. Then this record here is basically the basic annual to all the months, okay, this amount. Then same thing happens for basic monthly and premium monthly, and then I have the last 4 records here. This is basically for each month what was the total revenue that I'm getting here, okay? And then finally it's the total revenue irrespective of the month and the membership type name, okay? So this is basically the solution to this particular problem. I hope this is clear, and I hope you liked this problem and the case study. You can now solve all the remaining problems on your own. In fact, you can try to solve this problem on your own in a different way as well. Now I'm going to share the dataset, scripts, and everything else in my blog. You will find the link to my blog in the video description, so definitely check that out. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon in the next one. Bye.